Welcome back to another episode of the Wet-Pastellist, where we talk about wet pastel techniques with soft pastel and anything pastel. So today's episode is taking a painting that I thought was done. I had actually done another video on it because it involved 3 wet techniques and 3 blending techniques. We did those techniques and the wet techniques in the middle of those. I'll try to put that down in the description. So if you want to see how we used wet pastel techniques at 3 different points along the process of this painting that we're starting with today, you can go and take a look at that. So that link, hopefully I'll get that in the bottom. But today I'm going to take that painting because after I looked at it, while it was a nice painting, it wasn't what I was after. So I'll talk a little bit of what I was after, and I'll show you how I took the existing palette, which was in the oranges and the yellows, and how I made changes very simply to this and used some blending techniques, which I'll talk about because they vary. But it just didn't turn out like the drawing. I let it in the last video find its own way. So if you're liking this content, please be sure to hit the like button. As I said, today we're taking that painting from a video previously, and we're going to take it. It looked like this when I was done. And we're going to try to see if we can improve it and come up with something that looks a little more like the drawing. And I love the softness between the trees and the sky, especially in here, the trees almost blend into the sky seamlessly and bring the eye around to this area that will be light. And the river in this is, not the river, but the lake in this is a lot more defined than it is in the piece that was earlier finished, or that I said was probably 80% to 90% finished. When I started this, this particular sketch was what I was using, and I want to try to go back into this and see if I can like it better when I'm done. A lot of times we'll finish a piece, think it's almost finished or 90%, or even say it's finished, and then a day or two later discover, you know, I think I can make this better. So I'll do one of 2 things. One of 3 things. I'll either make it better, it won't be any better, or I'll have to destroy it and start all over again. So I'm not afraid to do that. And if you reach a point in your career that you can do that, then it gives you confidence to do things because you know you can change them, you know you can fix them. And what I'm going to try to do here is I'm going to see if I can't tone down some of these blues and keep it into this orange and red, reddish figures, and then just use some of these highlights in a different way. So it's going to go ugly at first because we're basically destroying the color palette that was selected. So, and we're destroying it in a way that we can come back, we, meaning me or you if you get in a situation like this. But this up in here, I think already I'm starting to like the way the colors are coming together better. The texture on here allows me to just scumble this over. I'm not pressing that hard. I want some of that blue to show through. That's what tells us that it's a part of this palette. But I wanted the warmth up in that sky, and that sky was just too cool. And I'm going to drag over these trees. You can see how that's changing them quite a bit. I'll probably do some blending, but I want to try to see if I can't get this destruction done and find a path forward. I still have some runs and drips I might use in here, but I'm going to take this now and I'm going to use this more as a guide, where before this was a guide to get me started, and I wanted to see where the painting would take me. Now I'm going to try to go back and try to get some of the softness that we lost by making those trees more defined than what they were in this. So I'll hang that up just off a camera view, but we'll get started on this. Now I'm just brightening this area back up to become a reminder at this particular point. It's definitely not the final set of colors and intensities, but this was the one area that, because I made those trees so sharp and they didn't blend into that background, then this is an area that I think I lost some of the excitement that the texture from the wet gesso allows me to show through. So this is kind of some background color that once I make that pop at the end, we will get a nice blurring sensation. See how these trees are now starting to go back and they're starting to get up into these clouds, and because I took that more saturated blue and blue violet out of there by adding this this red orange that is of a deeper value, it allows this whole thing to come together a little bit more. I'm starting to get some of that sense of how the edges are blurring, and we don't want the entire thing to be blurry, but we want to select and be very selective where I put those sharp edges when I finish. And that will be near the finish when I brighten this area up right in here. So this is our 1/3 marks. Just like I did this page, I marked it out into thirds. So this is falling right into the 1/3 marks, vertically and horizontally. So there will probably be the brightest area where this intersection occurs. That's the plan. But I'm just loving now how some of this is really starting to blend in. Now from here to here, and from here to here, and here to here, and here to here, all this area is uniform. And I still have to, if you'll see in the drawing, you see this is a little darker down here because this is the base of the trees. So that's what I'm going to enter into next. Now the way I'm going to do that is because shadows, even though this is now much warmer, shadows have some cool light in them. If the highlights and middle lights or middle ground are warm, typically your shadows have some cool light in them. So I'm going to first put this blue down, and the first thought, but again, I'm not pressing hard because this has lots of beautiful texture on here. I'm being very selective based on my drawing of where this shoreline of the lake would be and these reflections would be coming out. You might be thinking, well, you just got rid of the blues. Well, true. But I need this area a little darker, so I'm putting this base in here. And then I'm going to go back over it with a warmer reddish brown. But I'm even lighter than I did with the blue. I'm very lightly touching into these areas. So that blue, because of the texture, it's a layer that comes through and reads as a cool shadow. So layering is one of the things, especially in tonalism, as a tonalist, using soft pastels and wet pastel techniques. As a tonalist, I want to be able to come in here and keep things and control things as far as what's cool and what's warm. So I'm going to come down in here just a little bit more because this is really going to be a reflection in some people's minds. I want it to be a little vague I don't want it to be, oh, that's a definite reflection one-to-one, but I want to keep this vagueness, and that's what I love about tonalism, is you're able to just by subtly making a few changes, just by using the texture and the wet pastel techniques that were done in the previous video on this piece. For those just joining, the wet pastels were done on a previous video. I used 3 different wet pastel techniques on this. I used an alcohol in the early stages of it. I added gesso. Then I sprayed on some fixatives to the point that I could touch this and the pastel didn't come off. It's a special fixative made out of casein. It's called Spectrofix, and you mix it up from concentrate. They sell it pre-mixed, but I buy the concentrate, and it'll make 4 bottles that have a nice spray applicator on them. The trouble I found with the Spectrofix in pre-mixed is that if you've got a large quantity usually, and when this little spray thing clogs up, you either have to find a spray thing that will fit it if you can't get that unclogged. I lost almost a half a bottle once because the large container that it was pre-mixed in, the spray nozzle broke. So I've been buying the concentrate, and then you get the little spray can. Here's the big one that's pre-mixed, and it clogged up and I couldn't get it unclogged. I tried various methods and solvents and I couldn't get it to unclog and the spray work again. So I've gone to this smaller size. It's probably half this size since it gave out half the way through. I'm on my second mix, but you buy a little concentrate that's half this size and you get 4 fills of this bottle. But Spectrofix is really good because the values don't change or like they do with, the values don't change like they do with other fixatives. But it doesn't really matter because I go over these. Even if I used a fixative like Sennelier, I've used it in these before. Even when I use Sennelier, I'm trying to create the drips and the runs that I can follow. So I'm going to go back over them with pastel. And it just gives a different effect. So it's not that I don't use other fixatives, it's just on this particular piece I did not use other fixatives other than the Spectrofix. So here's our original again. We're getting much closer, and at this particular point I may put some pop in here and see how this goes, and then we'll get some more variation in here. I added those clouds were yellow-orange when we started, and I put in a kind of a pinkish violet in there. So I'm going to grab that again, and looking at some of this, I'm going to see if I can't use that pink to brighten up some areas that are equivalent in the drawing. Now, although this is our 1/3, this is another 1/3. So I'm conscious of that as I'm trying to lighten up some areas that could be clouds, but they're more obscure than what you would find. And I don't want them to, definitely don't want them to compete with this lighter area down in here. I got that just a little light, so I'm going to go in there with the blue. I want this set of trees that are further in the distance to go back, and this tree to come forward, so I've got to be very careful and very subtle. I'll match them up right now, but I've got to get it to go back. because we're using a palette that is in the red, oranges, and yellows, I can now try to lighten this by using some of those oranges and reds. And I'll bring this yellow across and blend that and start to make that conjunction of the sky and those areas a little more obscure. Now I'm going to remove the glove because the blending I need to do, I need to have a different effect than what the glove will give me. And anybody that hasn't seen my videos before knows that I wear the gloves because my hands crack, not because pastels are toxic or anything. They're only toxic if you breathe in the dust. So I'm not going to take a deep breath right now. How's that? I got a stuck-on brush hair there that a lot of times I'll leave those places, but that one was sticking out way too much and giving the appearance of something that wasn't necessarily what I wanted to do. This is a little brighter red-orange, still within the palette range, but I want to put something dark next to that highlight because lights and dark are what the eye sees in contrast, especially in tonalism where your values are very near one another. When your values are this close to one another, it's the color difference that creates contrast. You're not creating contrast in values by making such a wide scale of values, like from 1 to 10 or 2 to 8. You're trying to keep them narrow to 3 or 4 different values other than where you might punch it up with that 1% at the end. I'm in the same 6 and 7 value range as that orange that I just put on there, but this is a 6 or 7 value, and this is also. If you turn all 3 of these sticks of pastel to gray, they will be in a gray value of 6 or 7. But because our eyes see color, the tonalist discovers you can create this contrast by putting colors next to one another. And if you turn it all gray, then there's very little difference between all of this and all of this, yet our eyes see the color very differently. And this is the area that I want to try to concentration, make pop, because it is in that 1/3 intersect. While I'm in the 6 and 7 zone range for these, I will probably go up to into the 8 or 9 and just put a touch here and here. It's that 1%. You'll hear people talk about, you know, your painting needs to be 80 or 90% this and 15% that and 5% that. And then just using for your shadows, just using a little bit of the darks and a little bit of the lights to create that intense pop. So I'm going to go now over into and probably get a 9. So I'm 2 gray values away, but this is where I'm just going to get a little bit in there. And then the finger blending, as I said, is different. I'm going to go up, not down, and this will be about the only sharpest area in this, because I'll be blending this up into those other intensities. And you can see how it almost looks like the sun has just started to go behind something there, whether it's a cloud or whether it's a horizon. Soften that just a little with the fingers. You can't really do that softening with a glove unless it fits really, really tight. There it pops, and it comes closer to what my drawing was than what we began with. I have looked at this and I've decided, okay, the final touches, unless I come in to the studio tomorrow and find I just really don't like this. But this is a lake, and while a lot of I actually have a friend who says that my work resembles Edward Hopper because my spaces are so empty of humans. And this is a lake cottage, so I'm going to see if I can put a few of these little lights that might be night lights before dawn or at sunset, and see if these will not be too distracting. Soften that one a little bit because it's over here on the darker side. Well, I hope you enjoyed that. If you're liking the content, please hit the like button. If you haven't subscribed, if you're a subscriber, do that also. It lets more people see this. I took that painting that wasn't what I really wanted. I didn't know I didn't want it that way until it sat around the studio for a few days. From the last video I shot using wet pastel techniques, with these soft pastels, I decided I went over it, and you got to see how I made those changes to get to where this painting is. This will probably set in my studio, and I'll come and look at it day after day, and I'll make a decision. Is it done or isn't it? So if you like this, again, hit the like button. But until next time, happy painting, and we'll have another topic for you. Bye-bye.